Here's how you could draw Bohr-Rutherford and Lewis diagrams the simple way. Let's start with the Bohr-Rutherford diagram. It's very straightforward because a Bohr-Rutherford diagram consists of three different parts: the nucleus, shells, and electrons. I'm going to use sodium as an example. First, you need to draw the nucleus of a Bohr-Rutherford atom by determining the number of protons and neutrons in your chosen element. You can easily find the number of protons by just looking at the atomic number, which indicates the order of elements on the periodic table. For sodium, the atomic number is 11. Next, to find the number of neutrons, you'll need to determine the mass number and subtract the number of protons from it. You can round the atomic mass, which is this little number right here, to get the mass number. For sodium, the atomic mass is approximately 23, so we could just round that to just 23. And after subtracting the number of protons, which is 11, we find that sodium has 12 neutrons. Now that we have our nucleus organized, we can move on to the electrons and shells. Keep in mind that a neutral atom will always have the same number of electrons as it does protons. So for sodium, it would have 11 electrons, the same way it has 11 protons. Each shell of an atom has a specific limit of electrons it can hold. The order goes like 2, 8, 8, 18, 32, and 72. But for our purposes, you really only need to know the limits for the first 3 shells. Finally, to complete our diagram, we fill the shells with the number of electrons that our element has. So for sodium, we place 2 electrons in the first shell, 8 in the second shell, and we are left with 1 valence electron in the third shell. Keep in mind that the very outer shell of a Bohr-Rutherford diagram is called a valence shell. Likewise, the electrons in said shell are called valence electrons. Now, let's move on to the Lewis diagram, which is also an incredibly simple way to represent the valence electrons of an atom. Start with the chemical symbol of your element, which represents the nucleus and all the inner electrons. For sodium, it's simply Na. As an example for other elements, hydrogen would be H, helium would be He, lithium would be Li, and so on. Next, identify the number of valence electrons. As we just discussed, sodium has 1 valence electron. You can easily tell the amount of valence electrons that an element has by simply looking at its group. Use this chart as it might be helpful. Now, we could place dots around the chemical symbol to represent the valence electrons. You want to place the dots starting at the top and moving clockwise around the symbol for consistency. For sodium, you would place 1 dot on top of the Na to signify the valence electron. And there you have it. You've successfully drawn both the Bohr-Rutherford and Lewis diagrams, the simple way.